Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica DiRuzza, and thank you so much for being here on my live. This is my channel, Trust Psyche, and I am a depth psychotherapist, archetypal astrologer, and teacher. And what I want to share with you today are some of my reflections on the moon moving through the 12 houses in astrology. I'm going to go sequentially through each house, and I want to first begin by saying that I hope that in this brief overview of the moon through the houses that there is a gem in it for you. The 12 houses of the zodiac represent 12 domains or areas of life. They are thought of as realms. You can think of them as containers, you can think of them as vessels, you can think of them as specific areas or stages upon which our life unfolds. The moon, I think, out of all of the 10 celestial bodies in our solar system, is actually probably the most complex. And so the moon represents our family, it represents the mother-child relationship. It represents our early childhood experiences. It also represents our inner child as we grow older and become adults. It's our emotional body. So it's the psychosomatic part of our being, our feelings, our emotions, and how that lives in each of our bodies somatically. It therefore stores all memory of everything that's ever happened to us in our subconscious. And it also is the relational matrix of our life. So it's all of the people in our life, not just our family, but our community, our tribe, close friends, people that we're intimate with or that we spend time with. And the moon is the other people in our life, whomever that may be. So let's begin by the moon in the first house. Because the first house, the ascendant, represents self-identity, our appearance, and the first or initial impressions that we make as we move through the world moment to moment. It's the house of self and personal beginnings. So when the moon is in the first house, what you see often in the family culture seen in the moon is a lot of unique individuals, almost even an eccentricity where this person's identity is very much being forged out of the family of origin. There can sometimes be, in its positive expression, a celebration of unique individuality and identity birthed out of the family. It can be the encouragement and the support from early childhood through adulthood to really be who you are instead of being defined by who your parents want you to be or even societal expectations of who you're supposed to be. But it also very much can be this deep sense and an inner knowing of self-possession from the moment that you first become conscious. There's a sense that you belong to yourself and nobody else. So there's a sense of deep inner knowing of self-belonging. And it represents on a soul level that this life, in many respects, is an attempt to have a new beginning or a fresh start around your family identity. So that could be anything from leaving the family matrix and going out on a quest of individuation to really being focused as a top priority of breaking generational trauma or places of dysfunction in the lineage that has been passed down from the ancestors, and a sense of wanting to create a new beginning or a fresh start if you choose to go ahead and have a family of your own. So it's a lot of focus there around the individual identity being born out of the family matrix. I think when we look at the moon, we have to look at the family culture, the values of the family. And with the moon in the first house, you can really see a deep innate need, which is the moon, it's our innate needs, to really be your own person. And so if you come from a family culture that honors and celebrates and empowers that, you see someone who's very successful in listening to their needs and following them into a place of deep belonging and community, where they still get to be who they are in their individuality, but in relationship. If you come from a family of dysfunction, perhaps with a narcissistic parent, or if there's mental illness, what happens is there's a lot of confusion and entanglement around the child trying to individuate, which is its primary drive, out of the family system. And so you can see a lot of toxicity and emotional reaction from the family that tries to shame the child, or it doesn't try to understand who the child is and their difference in relation to the family system. Okay, let's move into the second house. So the second house is a lot of focus around personal finances, possessions, and values. It governs material security, right? It's ruled by Taurus, and it has a lot to do with self-worth. So when you have the moon in the second house, this life is an innate need and drive to find a sense of belonging and self-worth through your material possessions. So often with the moon in the second, this person could have a very strong need to own their own home, or to collect a lot of physical things in the material world in order to have a sense of security and safety. The moon is how we get our security and our safety. And when the moon is in the second, we tend to nurture and nourish ourselves through the acquirement of material possessions. I know sometimes in the spiritual community or the new age community, there can be this rejection or putting down of the material world or being materialistic, but there can be a very healthy relationship that we have to our material possessions. And oftentimes a moon in the second gets a deep sense of security and safety in their body and in their nervous system, which is the moon, through feeling that they can acquire their own material possessions. And so it's very necessary for them to have a lot of earthly possessions, like a home or a car or lots of clothes, whatever it may be, and to be able to provide that for oneself. It might be coming from a family that perhaps is materialistic, or a family that is very focused on money. Maybe that worth and value comes from how much money you have or how much money you make, or a family that is a family of hoarders, or a family that very much gets its sense of worth and pride from having very nice things. Sometimes that's in great harmony with the moon in the second, but sometimes that can create a situation where it makes it difficult for the moon in the second house to feel like whatever they have is good enough if what they acquire themselves can't somehow live up to the material standards of the family of origin, if it comes from a culture, a family culture that very much gets one's self-worth and identity from how much money you have or how much material possessions you have, how nice your house is or how nice your car is. Okay, let's move into the third house. The third house governs communication, and it also very much is about early education, primary school, it's our siblings, and it has to do with thinking, learning, our local environment, and short trips. So a moon in the third house is someone who's really going to find that sense of connection and belonging through needing to constantly process and talk about their feelings. There's someone who's going to be probably very communicative in some way around what they're feeling and their emotions. So, this is someone who often loves to journal or loves to talk a lot with whomever is around them. You can think of a third house moon as that person who walks through the market and knows everybody's name and says hello to everybody and is a very one on one personal basis in their local environment. They're the person that you go to who knows all the best restaurants in town. They're the one who understands the local topography, the geography. So it's very local consciousness, and someone who either stays close to home, either staying in the town that they grew up in, or someone who has a home that's either very communal. Maybe you live with your siblings, or maybe you have a lot of housemates because you like that kind of sibling peer communal way of having a home, right? So wherever the moon is like shows us what happens inside of our home, the quality of it, and the things that we like to be having going on inside our domestic life. Or it's someone who loves to have a home base and then take short trips and get those weekend getaways or go to those different Airbnbs and kind of go out and come back, go out and come back, go out and come back. It's like going on short trips is like going to recess for a moon in the third house. But again, there's someone who is constantly talking or in some way communicating about their environment around them. It has a very moon Mercury quality to it as it's commenting on whatever it is that it's seeing around it. It's also someone who is probably going to be either very defined by their sibling relationships, or it's going to be someone who is going to be very influenced by whatever happened to them in their early education. So that's either maintaining friends from childhood and having those lifelong friends, or whatever happened in primary school being very influential in one's life. Sometimes you can see it in the aspect of people who feel called to work with young children later in life. The fourth house, the IC, is the one that is ruled by the home. So it is all the qualities of the moon. It's the home, it's our family, it's our roots, it's our lineage, it's our ancestors, it's our past, and it's our emotional foundation. Think Cancer here. And it also covers all of domestic life and our heritage. So when a moon is in the fourth house, typically this person is very defined by their family. Their family plays a very strong influence in their day-to-day life. So either their family, they live with their family, they live in a generational home, they live close to their family, like on the same block or in the same city, or there's a lot of constant interaction and influence with the family of origin. This is also someone who probably gets a lot of their identity and belonging from having a family of some kind, whether that's having children or in some way taking on a parental role in the world. This is someone who is probably a homebody, somebody who very much is identified with their home and with domesticity. And this is also someone who has a very deep connection and is powerfully influenced by their ancestors more than most. So this can be a really deep curiosity and drive around genealogy. This is someone who knows the family tree or super fascinated with ancestry and heritage and documenting that, or, in some way being in a deep communion or even conversation with the ancestors. The fifth house is associated with our creativity, and it very much has to do with self-expression and enjoyment, pleasure, It also has to do with romance and children and activities that we do because they make us feel good. So, the fifth house being a very creative house, when you have the moon here, this is usually a childhood that is a very playful childhood where the inner child never goes away. It's with you from the day you're born till the day you die. It's a very creative, expressive life where one tends to be very connected to the arts, to the visual arts, to music, to dance, to poetry, to anything that is a creative self expression. The moon in this house is very theatrical. So it's someone who definitely wears their emotions on their sleeves and it kind of just pours out of them in that Leo like way. It's a very fiery house. And so that expressiveness, usually this child comes into the world being very dynamically expressive in their emotions. You know exactly how they're feeling, you know exactly whether they like you or not, or like something or not, from jump, all the way through life. This is someone who gets great pleasure out of living a romantic life. This person is often a lover and very passionate. This is someone who also tends to have an affinity for children in some way, whether that's having their own children, being around the youth. It's someone who feels very deeply called to being in community with either children or a culture of people where there is a lot of permission and play for theatrical expression. So the moon in the fifth is someone who's into the theater. It's someone who finds tribe, who finds belonging in the arts, in drama, in theater, because there's the celebration of just being able to live a creative and expressive life. And this is so important to a fifth house moon. So when we look at the moon placement, we're looking at how can we support this person from day one through their life around how to get their innate needs met. And that can be anything from their emotional needs to their physical needs, even their spiritual needs. The moon is very dimensional. It has a lot of layers to it. And so when we think about what are our inner needs and what would make our inner child the most happy, we're really looking at, okay, what does the moon need here to be fulfilled, to be nourished? Okay, now we're going to move into the sixth house. So the sixth house has a lot of concern with our health. It also is our daily routines. Think Virgo. It's our work environment. And it's also how we show up in service. It covers habits, wellness, and responsibilities. So when you have the moon in the sixth house, the life tends to be very focused and defined by the need for living in routine and structure. Now, that routine and structure can either be loose or rigid, but there is that need for that rhythm of predictability. I know that when I wake up, this is what's going to happen. 1, 2, 3, 4 through the end of the day. So the moon in the sixth house does the best when it can live a life of predictability, routine, and structure. Again, that can be loose or more defined. It's also someone who gets a lot of nourishment from being in service. Now, sometimes that can show up as a person who maybe works for free or volunteers or works for a lower fee than maybe what that career, that job, or that service would usually get paid. It's someone who is very much finds themselves in a role of service in whatever communities they are in. They tend to take on that role of serving whatever is needed in that moment to make the community functional. So there's a deep sense of duty and responsibility that one tends to feel in their emotional body to the communities that they're in. These are the ones who are often doing more of the laborsome or tedious work to make the event or the group or the project happen. It tends to be someone who does well living in the details or living in the logistics. It comes pretty naturally to a moon in the sixth house, but it's also someone who very much is guided and defined by living a life of health and wellness. And that often means that there's been probably a lot of issues and focus throughout one's life from early childhood through adulthood around health issues. So this could be anything from someone who has autoimmune diseases to chronic pain or chronic issues that are needed to tend to, or this is someone whose focus is very much on nutrition, health, wellness. Maybe this person is a nutritionist, or maybe this person is a wellness coach, or maybe this is someone who's just had to spend a lot of their daily time and routines focused on their health and their well-being, and that the daily routines are very much shaped around whatever those health needs are. Lastly, the work environment. The sixth house is someone where the moon represents like the kind of imprint that we have from the world and the people around us, the environment that we're in. And so with a sixth house moon, the environment very much has the work environment has a very strong impact on how that person is doing emotionally. Okay, now let's move into the top half of the chart. So we're moving from the bottom up through the top. So we're going from the sixth into the seventh over the descendant. And the seventh house specifically focuses on relationships. It has to do with one-on-one relationships. And so it traditionally is the house of marriage and partnerships or significant others. So this doesn't have to be an actual marriage, but anybody that you're in partnership, and that can include business partnerships. So the moon in the seventh house is someone whose life is really focused on having a lot of one-on-one relationships. It's someone who is oriented towards being in partnership. This could be from anyone who is a serial monogamous to having a ton of one-on-one friendships or having a ton of one-on-one business relationships. This is someone who thrives and needs to be in lots of partnership. This is someone who's probably likely very strongly called to marriage or a lifelong partnership of some kind. This is someone who probably's parents' relationship, whatever happened there, has a much stronger influence and impact around how this person lives in relationship and this person's values around showing up in relationship. So for example, if this moon in the seventh, the parents stayed together for life, this person is probably going to have a very strong orientation towards prioritizing a lifelong marriage. Whereas if this person had parents who divorced at a young age, then this person's probably still going to be called to one-on-one relationship, but might have difficulty in making it long-term relationships or a successful marriage. Okay, so now we're going to move into the eighth house. So the eighth house is about transformation. It's ruled by Pluto, Scorpio. It also is about intimacy, deep bonding, and it's the house of shared resources, inheritances, and the occult. And it also represents rebirth. So when the moon is in the eighth house, this is someone who is living very deeply in their emotional body. This is someone who craves really deep intimacy. This is someone who tends to bond very deeply in a kind of cathected and cathartic manner. Whenever they enter into a relationship, there is a deep drive for intimacy. That intimacy is emotional and sexual. This is someone where when they bond with you, they bond all the way. And so if they come from a healthy, functional family, This would be someone who's very deeply bonded to every person in their family. There's a culture of intimacy in the family. The family is on a journey of transformation and rebirth together, where everyone evolves and grows and supports one another and empowers one another in their transformative process. This is someone whose family is going to provide a lot of shared resources and inheritance. So they're either going to get a lot of wealth from the family, a house from the family, inheritance from the family, or they're going to get a lot of opportunities from the family network. This is also someone where you come from a family that is deeply immersed in the occult, and that everyone has in some way some kind of occult identity. So someone in the family was an astrologer or a metaphysician or an alchemist. It's that celebration of like the witch and the wizard. Now, in a family that is dysfunctional or toxic, then you're going to see a lot of themes around betrayal. You're going to see themes around manipulation, coercion, domination, control, sometimes that happening around resources, like using money to try and control the children and their decisions, or the threat of the loss of inheritance if you don't do what they want or what they say, or spending one's life in the muck of the unconscious and unprocessed feelings and emotions of the family system. And so, really going super deep into the early childhood experiences and the memories there and the trauma there, and spending a lot of one's emotional life processing that. Okay, into the ninth house. The ninth house governs higher education, and it has to do with philosophy, our worldview, our spirituality. It also has to do with travel, like further out travel than the third house. And it has to do with expansion and exploration and other cultures. So when the moon's in the ninth house, this person often has a profound love of travel. They might be an international traveler. This is someone who's going to find a sense of home and belonging in higher education. This is someone who's going to find community through spirituality and philosophy. This is someone who's going to be nurtured and nourished by other cultures. Maybe a childhood where there was a lot of exposure to other cultures, either through travel, through parents who were educators, professors, or through reading, right? Like the high arts, high philosophy, someone who was exposed to from the beginning of life, philosophy and worldviews and other cultures. So this is someone who needs to live a very expansive and exploratory life to get understanding of other worlds and other peoples, and the profound fascination of that, and a family culture where either a parent is a philosopher or spirituality is very much at the center of the family culture, or there is the need to go and find that out in the world. If the family can't provide that ninth house fulfillment of higher education, philosophy, and travel, then the person with the moon in the ninth will be very driven to leave home and go and find that out in the world. Okay, let's move into the 10th house, the midheaven. The midheaven, the top of the chart, is our career. And it very much is our social status, our public life, our public persona, how we're seen in the public domain. It also covers our ambition and our achievements and our public reputation. So think Capricorn here. So when the moon is in the 10th house, this person is going to probably be a very ambitious person who has a need for a certain level of social status and a need for a career, and for that career to be how one feels fulfilled in life, and someone who lives a very public life or has a very public identity, or where one's family is a very public family. The moon in the 10th can be someone who runs a family business or works from home, or whose family is very central to being the motivation for the achievements around career. You can see this sometimes when the moon is in the 10th, when the person becomes a parent. That then becomes the ambition and drive for them to achieve greater status and reputation within their vocation or their career. And so it's someone whose identity out in the world, in the public life, very much is one that is a combination of whatever work they're doing and their family. So either who they are as a parent or who their parents were, taking over the family business, starting a family business, where the family in some way is very involved in one's career and aspirations. Okay, the 11th house. The 11th house is our friendships, it's groups and social causes. It also governs our aspirations, our community involvement, and our networking. And so when the moon is in the 11th house, this person is somebody who very much gets their sense of belonging in groups. This is someone who needs to be probably involved in a lot of different types of groups, and someone who probably needs to do a lot of their emotional processing and sharing of their inner lunar life with the people in the groups. This is someone who tends to be transparent in groups and really forthcoming in sharing of what's going on in their inner world and their inner life with the people that they're in community with. This is someone who also is going to probably feel very heavily involved in social causes, where they either start the groups for social causes or they participate in groups that are about social causes and social change. This is someone who very much, in some way, has been concerned with networking. And this could also be someone whose family of origin, there was a lot of sense of status that came from whom one was associated with within their networks and their community. So a lot of sense of who you are is defined by who you surround yourself with. So there's a lot of value placed on who your friends are, the social causes you're involved in, and the networks and communities that you're a part of. Okay, last one, the 12th house. The 12th house represents our solitude. It represents our dreams, the unconscious. It also represents hidden matters and sometimes is identified with the subconscious. And it represents the endings, right? It's the last house. It's the end of the story. And so when the moon is in the 12th house, it's probably one of the more kind of mysterious places that the moon can be placed. But this is someone whose inner world is very much taken up by the symbolic and transpersonal realm. This is someone whose emotional body is deeply connected to the collective fields of consciousness that they are in. And this is someone who probably has a very deep relationship with their dreams and the living symbols within those dreams. This is someone who probably has a very deep relationship or is greatly defined by their unconscious. And this is someone who probably does require more solitude in order to fill their cup, to feel safe, for their nervous system to be regulated. The moon in the 12th house is someone who is more private or involved in more hidden matters, where the family might feel a little bit, the story of the family might feel a little bit more nebulous, hidden, diffuse, hard to access, like not as solid or defined. It could be the moon in the 12th, somebody whose parent has had struggles with mental illness. This could be somebody who grew up in a childhood that perhaps felt emotionally overwhelming or difficult to make sense of. Sometimes in the moon in the 12th, the person can have a difficult time remembering their childhood. But with time and age and the right support, this is somebody who very much can be a channel and have a deep connection with the unseen world, with the beyond, with the transpersonal, and that it's a very intuitive and feeling placement for the moon in the 12th houses. I want to thank you all so much for being here with me. I know that was a little bit of a different exploration than we usually do. I wanted to challenge myself today to see if I could go through the 12 houses and put the moon in there. So I hope that you got something out of this talk. I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments below. I always respond. I'd love for you to like and share this video and subscribe to my channel. And I'm just incredibly grateful that I get to come on here and connect with all of you and share the passions that I'm having in this current moment around astrology and depth psychology. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.